Landmarks! It's really the game that said, what if Forbidden Desert and Codenames had a baby? This clever word game packs hundreds of maps, multiple modes, and a very clever clue system, but navigating all that while being at the head of the table doesn't have to feel so daunting. So, let's learn how to teach some landmarks. I've wanted to say this for so long, but thank you to Floodgate for sponsoring this episode. Don't forget the Teacher's Guide! It'll give you step-by-step instructions on how to teach this game so you don't have to find your way through this teach every single time. But before we can teach the game, we must take the first step of any board game adventure. We need to convince someone to play it with us first. Like I mentioned in the intro, Codenames is the go-to comparison for this one, and you absolutely should use that to your advantage. If you've got friends or family who even remotely enjoyed Codenames, then this is the game to bring to the table next. If you just name drop Codenames, there's a pretty solid chance they'll already be sold on giving it a try. If they're unfamiliar with the board game world, you may have some luck relating it to the New York Times' word games, especially Connections. For the board game enthusiast in your life, Landmarks has a lot going for it. For starters, this game has both a competitive and cooperative mode, giving you a ton of flexibility in your pitch. Landmarks also features a lot more creativity in how you approach it, leading to a deeper and more involved set of clues as you proceed through the game. After setup, you're free to use whatever one-word clues you'd like with basically no restrictions, unlike a lot of board games where letters or words are provided for you at the start. This adds a lot of depth without adding too much complexity, meaning you'll have a ton more to talk about after the game is over. You'll get to discuss what clues were supposed to go where, what you may have meant by certain clues, why you thought a certain clue was amazing and yet they still got it wrong. Plus, this game's got hexagons. Every board gamer loves a good hexagon. Here's a 30-second pitch you can use to get someone to give Landmarks a look. Bad news, you're stuck on an island with a broken walkie-talkie, and there was treasure to be found. Fortunately, whoever's got the other map has the other broken walkie-talkie and can send us one-word clues at a time to help us navigate the deadly jungle. In Landmarks, one of us will navigate the others through an invisible maze of trinkets, traps, and treasure using only one-word clues. As we play, we'll be using the words that were previously placed to guide future guesses, kinda like we're making our own landmarks. Guess wrong and we'll be stuck on this island forever, but if we use our landmarks wisely, we'll make it out alive, and maybe a bit richer if we're lucky. So, Landmarks is one of those rare cases where your first game may be cooperative or competitive, depending on the group. I personally recommend a single cooperative game before diving into the competitive mode, so we're gonna get you set up for success before you dive straight into the part where you can assert dominance over your gaming group like the well-adjusted person you are. Just know that it's alright to skip to the competitive mode after you've explained the basics of gameplay if your group absolutely loathes cooperative games. As for the map to use, on screen are the 6 games from the beginner game map cards that I recommend you teach the game with. I've just put the starting words here so you don't have any spoilers in case you were worried about that, and you can easily shuffle through the cards to find one of these without seeing the solution. I ranked them from starting closest to furthest from the exit, so you can pick a shorter to longer game if you'd like. These cards were specifically chosen for a few factors. The first is that these are laid out in such a way that you'll almost guarantee an encounter with every mechanic on your way to the exit. Obviously, you're trying to get all 3 treasures, but for your first game, just making it to the exit with 1 or 2 should be the goal. Second, the exit on these maps is generally opposite to the one you start on the board with. If you're using other map cards, this isn't always the case. Sometimes the exit is actually surprisingly close to the starting area. However, for someone's first game, having the exit be so close for your introductory experience might be a bit underwhelming or even confusing if you accidentally go past it, so having that path be slightly more obvious on a group's initial play can help them learn all the mechanics in their first game. And finally, all of these have 2 or fewer negative spaces that are immediately next to your starting spaces. This will help decrease the chance that the group's first move is harmful and can help people from feeling like the game is instantly oppressive. Don't get me wrong, it absolutely can be oppressive, but we just don't want them to feel that way right at the start. And if it wasn't obvious enough, you as the teacher are going to be the Pathfinder, which is this game's term for the person who gives the clues. Something that I discovered while helping out at the Floodgate booth at Gen Con, where this game was first released, is that there's actually some merit to having 2 Pathfinders instead of just the 1. Having the extra head to help come up with the clues can make the game move a lot faster and can prevent those analysis paralysis moments you can get in word games like these when you can't come up with a clue. Plus, it's funny when your fellow Pathfinder exclusively keeps running people into traps. Also, as a person with terrible handwriting, I use super fine point dry erase expo markers to help people be able to read my illegible words. What you're seeing is me trying to write neatly. Buying these is totally optional. The marker that comes with the game is perfectly serviceable for those at least without dysgraphia, but for those of us whose handwriting makes them still look like they're in the 3rd grade, it's an option. Now that we've gotten all that out of the way, let's map out our teach. As with any game, it's important to touch on 3 critical areas before you get into anything else. You need to touch on the theme and the story by setting the stage, how to win and what to do first as the player by setting the goal, as well as making sure everyone's on the same page by setting some expectations. This game has a phenomenal vibe to it, using its map aesthetic to invoke that adventurous spirit. When setting the stage for this one, you're going to want to touch on the bonkers specificity of the story that this game is telling. You are the Pathfinder, and you're safe and happy back at camp, and the rest of the group is totally lost, like super lost. The other problem is that y'all's walkie-talkies are absolutely busted. As such, they're somehow only able to transmit one word at a time, and it's under these circumstances in which you think, you know, treasure hunting sounds really good right about now. It's the best. Also, music is definitely necessary, as always. Blast some adventure music by playing soundtracks from your favorite animated movies, or if you want to punch up the ambience, find one of those jungle noise videos that people use to sleep to crank the vibes to the max. In this game, obviously, everyone wants to get off the island alive, make it to the exit, but that's boring. We want to get out of here with treasure. So, the immediate goal of the game is more to try to work your way to treasures while avoiding the dastardly traps and curses this island has to offer. Let me be the first to point out that the curses and traps were not on the brochure, and I will be leaving this island a 2-star review on Google Maps. For setting the expectations, this is a game of fuzzy and imperfect information and logic. You really gotta lock in with your team to make sure that you're navigating the island safely, and you're only ever a few wrong moves away from death and despair. Because of the way hexagons work, there are going to be times where players need to take leaps of faith using leaps of logic, and that will be correct sometimes and wildly incorrect at other times. It's part of the fun, and it's best that your players know that going into it. You'll definitely die a few times in this jungle, especially when I'm the one giving the clues. Now that the big 3 is set up, it's almost time to start giving out some clues. Before I dive in, I like to get an extra map card out from the box to use as a reference for the players at the table. This is a great way to show off what you're looking at as the Pathfinder, so other players aren't confused as to why you keep saying they stumbled into a trap. It's because there's a trap there. I usually take a second to identify all the different kinds of spaces and hope that they use the power of context clues to understand which are good and which are not. Before you start giving clues, there's a trick I like to use to keep people engaged when I'm the Pathfinder. I ask the table who thinks they have the best handwriting, and whoever volunteers or gets voluntold will be the one to actually write down the words as you call them out. This makes it so that the players on the other end of the table stay a bit more involved in the process and can help them from entirely checking out while you come up with clues. It can also help add a feeling of adventuring partying, writing down their path on a map to get themselves out of a bind. For your first clue, I tend to try to give as obvious as a clue as possible in the direction that the party needs to head. All of the starting maps I gave should have 1 or 2 obvious or at least easier spaces to give a clue for, but that's going to be a puzzle for you to solve. What I go for with my first clue is to try to instill a sense of confidence in the players at the table by giving them an obvious first step to take. They say that the first step of the journey is the hardest one, and that rings especially true here, as the first step can be into an ancient curse or into a trap that violates the Geneva Conventions. It's time to talk strategy. After your first couple clues is where this game starts to get spicy. If you've got 2 obvious clues right up against each other, that's when this game is at its easiest. Like, if there's a space right next to cake and pie, and I say dessert, it's not rocket science to figure out what I'm going for there. Where this game gets hard is trying to get players to guess a clue that isn't right next to 2 spaces. Something that you'll want to go over for the table is, after your first clue, in this game, it's beneficial and sometimes even necessary to start moving away from other words in order to make it to some critical spaces on time. This could be to go grab some water to refill your guesses, or to snag an amulet right before you hit the exit. This means that sometimes a player needs to interpret your clues in a way that leads them to put a tile not directly next to 2 other spaces in order to travel more efficiently. I recommend bringing this point up earlier rather than later, and if you want a visual example of this, there's a pretty good one you can use on the bottom of page 4 of the rulebook. Unfortunately, I can't predict how your insane party will decide to take your clues, so telling you an exact order that mechanics will come into play is basically impossible. What we'll do is instead break this teach down into chunks that you can refer to as they happen. When the party stumbles into a trap or water space, that'll be a good time to explain how your limited guesses work. You just need to explain that you have a maximum number of guesses that you refill up to when you come across water, but falling into traps lowers that maximum by 1. It's important to know that coming across water early might waste a few guesses, but waiting too long could leave you stranded. Once you hit a curse or the amulet, you'll obviously need to explain those. Now, how it's supposed to work in Landmarks is that if you find a curse, you can find an amulet to remove the curse, and if you've got an amulet, it protects you from one curse. However, if you get 2 curses, then you're just completely screwed and you instantly lose. This can feel a little underwhelming and can make the game end earlier than it should otherwise, so I use a small house rule here to help combat the feeling that I personally get. My rule for curses, specifically in the cooperative mode, is that if you find the amulet first, it works like normal. It protects you from 1 curse. However, if you're already chocked full of curses, finding the amulet removes all the curses that you've currently got. This makes curses and the amulet feel like something that can be used strategically rather than just being a fun new way to lose the game early. Honestly, if you're running into multiple curses, you could probably use the help. When you find treasure for the first time, you'll explain that treasure is treasure. It's the bonus points of the game in the cooperative mode. I personally barely give any major attention to treasure for someone's first game, since treasure alone isn't going to make you win. Just getting off the island is already challenging enough, so I view treasure as more of a flex than anything. Something that you can do if you find the exit early and everyone's having a good time. You can just simply offer to the table to keep going, trying to get the remaining treasures while still dodging curses and avoiding running out of guesses. This makes it a very double or nothing situation. It's a cooperative game, so as long as you're having fun, you're playing the game right. Now, when it's competitive, now it's time to have 2 groups of adventuring parties who somehow both have broken walkie-talkies. This is why you shouldn't buy your adventuring gear off Temu. In this mode, there is no resource management mechanic or any trying to find the exit or whatever. Instead, opposing teams get as many guesses as it takes to find all of their team's treasure. However, in addition to your team's treasure, there are also neutral treasure spaces as well, which will give the team that finds it first a point. First team to have 4 treasures wins. Curses in this mode function as they normally do, where if you're currently cursed when you would win, you instead lose. Finding a curse means you need to find an amulet before you can win, and as a perk for going second, that team starts with an amulet to prevent 1 curse from the get-go. Once you've played the base game, this mode is extremely easy to teach, and frankly, it's my preferred way to play the game once everyone knows how it works and has some experience with placing clues in the map. That little rundown I literally just gave you is basically everything you need to know to start playing. On the teacher's guide, I've given you a little checklist to go through when explaining the competitive mode to the table, assuming you've already gone through the cooperative mode, and the overview on the back of the rulebook of all the changed rules for the competitive mode is a super short read as well if you ever need a reference. Something that I find fun is to use 2 different colors of expo markers to help remember which team gave which clues. I just think it's neat. And also, expo markers come in a pack with multiple colors anyway, so you might as well. Once you've successfully navigated this jungle, whether you did so together as a cohesive team or together as a cohesive rivalry, I think you deserve to give yourself a nice share of the treasure for a game well taught. This is one of my favorite games to bust out at a party, as it can really get a whole crowd of people invested in hexagons, which ultimately is the point of board games as a whole. Like I mentioned briefly, I got to help out Floodgate Games at their booth at Gen Con, so I spent most of that weekend just playing this game, and it was a blast every time. I don't think a single group came by who didn't enjoy it, so I can safely say that this is a great addition to your party game lineup. Oh snap, it's the teacher's guide. Print it out and leave it in the box so you're ready to go whenever you bust Landmarks out, or save it to your phone and have it ready whenever. It's available for free on my Patreon to everyone. You don't even need an account, it's just up there, forever. Link in the video basement. Video basement? Put video basement? Link in the description? I think I forgot the word for description when I was writing this. Speaking of treasure, my patrons are my greatest treasure. If you like what I do, consider throwing me a few bucks a month to make teaching games easier for everyone. And I am thrilled to be thanking Floodgate for sponsoring this video. I've been a massive fan of the company ever since I first got into the hobby. Sagrada, now it's up there over there, is one of my favorite games of all time. It was my gateway game back into the hobby way back in like 2017, so it's Floodgate who's responsible for all this in a way. So you know who to blame now. Alright, that's the end of what I got for you. I do hope that you haven't obtained any curses during the video, as I do not have an amulet for you. Thank you for watching, now go and make away with words! Also, as a terrible person with... as a person with terrible handwriting...